Welcome to Be You. We're just going to give everyone a few seconds to realize what time it is and pop in because if you are neurodivergent, like I am, regardless of which label or labels you own and that help you identify and make sense of your space in the world, time is made up. If you're hyper focused, or if you're stuck doing something you don't want to do, or if you accidentally zoned out and astral projected while eating a sandwich, you might not realize that it is time to start the webinar, and that's okay. We have a replay. We will have captions. There will be a transcript. There will be notes sent out to everyone. It's also kind of why I picked 11:15 for the start time, because whenever I start at the top of the hour, I don't know. I'm always late if it's like starting at 00 instead of a silly, very specific time. So as you're coming in and getting settled, don't worry about turning your camera on if that feels uncomfy for you. The way that this event is going to go is I'm going to run through a list of prepared materials I have. I'm going to share a little bit about my story. There will be no PowerPoint. Mostly for my own benefit, I get distracted by what's on the PowerPoint and forget about the notes that I have, and I forget to actually do the thing that I prepared to do. However, you can ask questions at the end. If you're watching the replay, there will be availability for you to ask questions in the comments beneath the video or to send me an email. Please do. Please interact. This is my first information session that I've run for Sensory Balance Space Inc. And so I'm open and consenting to any and all feedback, including topics that you would like to cover in future info sessions. So why am I calling it an info session and not a webinar? Because you're not going to learn an A+B=C framework. I'm not giving you tips, tools, and tricks to take away from you. You might glean some, and if you do, absolutely use it, run with it. What I'm sharing with you is how SBS Inc., Sensory Balance Space Inc., came into being, why it needed to exist, and where we're going in the next couple of years. By 2028 or sooner, everything that is in my vision for this company to become and more will have happened. And this is my public declaration to everyone who's been asking and everyone who's been wondering, where did Cheryl go for like the last 14 months, especially the last 8 months? Well, it was hermit season. So before I get too further along, hi, my name is Cheryl. Welcome to this space. I use they, them pronouns, and I promise not to make it weird if you make a mistake. I currently live as an uninvited settler and guest on the traditional unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation in so-called Nanaimo. Fun point of colonizer trivia. The reason we say Nanaimo is because the settlers / colonizers / the people who stole the land without permission where I live couldn't say Snuneymuxw. And it's like, so they said Nanaimo. Please explain to me how Snuneymuxw and Nanaimo sound exactly the same. They don't. Anyway, moving on. I won't spend too much time there. So I acknowledge that I am an uninvited guest living on land, on occupied land. And I work that framework into my business and into my life. I train all of my staff to know whose land they're on and to do the work to figure out what respect looks like to that nation, because it's different. Unceded, you heard me say the word unceded. That is a politically correct term for stolen. That means that they did not relinquish the title to their land and it was taken from them. And it's really important as descendants of the occupiers for us to, at the bare minimum, acknowledge that truth. Because we can't be safer, culturally informed spaces if we're too afraid to say, yeah, we are living in the duality of, I personally did not colonize anyone. However, I reap the benefits of colonization. Benefits is a gross word, but you know what I mean? I reap the consequences, positive, negative, neutral, of an action done in the past that gives me privilege over the people whose rightful heritage is the land that my house sits on. So the goal for today is to build trust, connection, and a spirit of community and collaboration with where Sensory Balance Space Inc. is going, because I saw a massive gap in the coaching industry. And it wasn't a skill gap necessarily. That's not quite how I would frame it. Practitioners, healers, program facilitators, spiritual leaders, and community organizers and event hosts who work in transformative work, who work with all different kinds of people, who maybe started by working with women because they themselves are women and it's easier to work with who you are, and then the ripple effect, your work starts to take on a life of its own and everybody starts coming in. And at a time when politically everything is over politicized and there's no room for a learning curve, there's no room for grace. A lot of people are getting canceled and they didn't even know they made a mistake. Also, getting canceled isn't real. Ask me about that another time. And people are too afraid to be inclusive in language and deed for fear of doing it wrong, of making a mistake, of being clunky, of excluding their current clientele and existing clients and the people they know on their heart they have been sent here to work with. And I saw a massive gap that I could easily fill. Okay, more on that later. So, you are here because you care about humans more than you care about labels and head counts. You care about the whole human, about the transformation of the whole human, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that in order for the real, true, authentic, raw, vulnerable transformation that your work brings to a person to take place, they need to feel safe, they need to feel seen, and they need to feel supported. And I'm here to tell you that there are so many people, even who already attend your events, that don't fall into that category. Because things that are fundamentally part of their identity are overlooked, ignored, or dismissed, intentionally or unintentionally, by the coaching industry, by the all or nothing thinking, by the hyper compartmentalization of the human experience. We have infinitely more in common than we have differences. And this will start to become more apparent as we go on. So, who am I? Who's Cheryl? Aside from my name and my pronouns, I have 20 plus years of volunteer work experience with vulnerable populations, including but not limited to immigrant communities through teaching English as a second language and outreach, unhoused folks, I was one, sex workers, respite care, disabled children and youth, pride societies, autism advocacy, disabled adults. I was a corrections chaplain in Canada in men's medium and minimum security institutions. And I come from and have worked extensively with low income and poverty impacted folks. Over my lived experience as a kid, I grew up undiagnosed and unsupported in a family impacted by generational poverty, addiction, crime, incarceration, sexual violence, and neglect. And I am uniquely qualified to be a bridge between the folks I share privilege with and those being impacted by systemic old earth more on this later, but old earth colonial violence. I believe in allowing the authentic expression of a human being to bubble up, whatever expression that isn't harming anyone around them. And harm in this instance does not include discomfort. Okay? Being uncomfortable is not the same thing as being unsafe. Got it? Cool. As such, my entire business, my entire existence, and this talk is rooted in my authentic voice. I do not edit how I speak. So you will see in my sentences, in my copy online, and sometimes when I'm speaking, it'll be a mixture of pop culture, colloquialisms, queer culture, what I call $5 words from being in university, because I've got a couple of bachelor's degrees. So like I'm well-lived, widely educated, and still humble enough to be a silly goose, you know? So you will find a blend of my multiple bachelor degrees, certifications, diplomas, training, and sassy, direct, oddball humor. You get to be all of yourself here. Professionalism, by and large, is a made-up thing that reinforces the structures that oppress people in the first place. And nobody can really name it without excluding neurodivergent folks, other disabled folks, and members of the global majority. Get familiar with that term. It's the less invasive way of saying everyone who isn't Caucasian. So how did Sensory Balance Space start? Okay. Sensory Balance Space Inc. and Sensory Balance Spaces started as an answer to a very personal problem. I have the best intentions every year to attend the weekly summer night market in my city. And week after week, year after year, I felt left out and ashamed that I couldn't make it through, that I couldn't force myself to stay. I've late discovered autism, and it impacts my ability to filter out all the sights, all the sounds, all the smells, all the temperatures, all the textures coming from every direction in dynamic environments. And then when you add people and socialization and like dogs and stuff and like the weather, it's like I'm sure you can feel it. And some of you are like, oh my God, I would love that. And I'm just like, no, thank you. Having a place where I could go, de-stress, and make a plan of engagement once I was there would make all the difference. I pair neurosomatics, breathwork, and psychological principles with play and creativity to foster a safe space to deal with social anxiety stored and the frenetic energy in the body by engaging with the 5 felt senses plus 1. So for all of our spiritual folks here, we know that the plus 1 might be the soul, the energetics, the connection to source, to God, to universe. And for everyone who isn't spiritual, that's okay. It's the part that makes you you that isn't your mind or your body. Like you're the thing that gives you life and makes you breathe, your spark, the way your eyes light up when you're excited about something, it's that part of you, that sense. The way you can tell when you're being watched, even if it's just by a cat, that's the 5 plus 1 felt senses. So at a weekly market over the course of 13 weeks in our inaugural running, Sensory Balance Space saw 200 plus attendees of all ages and abilities in 2024. So it was over 13 weeks, and over 13 weeks, we had 200 plus people with a max capacity. We had about 32 people in this space at one time, but it was never empty. It was used by volunteers, people young and old. There were grandparents there. There were single folks there. There were kids there with their adults. And it empowered people to take a break and go back in there without writing everything off and going home and feeling crappy that they didn't come and accomplish what they wanted to do. Sensory balance is rooted in neurosomatic science and energetic principles. And today's talk, the rest of today's talk, isn't a how-to training. It's a look at what becomes possible for your business, your clients, and you as a leader when sensory balance and accessibility aren't an afterthought. They aren't something you solve on the fly. They're something you plan intentionally for. So the real problem you might already be feeling at your events whether they're small or large, is you're are already having guests who feel overwhelmed. They disappear partway through the event, or they shut down, they withdraw, they stop participating, they look away, they're doodling, they're getting up a lot, they're shifting in their seat a lot, they're visibly uncomfortable or visibly checked out. They spend half the time in the bathroom, the car, backstage, in the hallway chatting with others, or maybe they even disappeared to their room for a nap. They love the idea of an event, but they crash from the sensory overload or the social anxiety. So they'll show up, and they'll be a wallflower the entire time, and then leave regretting that they didn't interact with as many people. Like, they paid top dollar to be at your event and then didn't network with anyone because they were so overwhelmed. As leaders, you might be afraid of getting inclusion wrong and getting called out by people. There will always be someone who's triggered who will call you out on literally anything you do. And the only time we get super activated about it is when we already believe a little bit of what they're saying. So if you are already carrying the fear that you're going to do it wrong, and it's not something you can figure out, and it's not something that you can be a beginner and you can be on a learning curve with, like literally everything else you've mastered in your life, you're going to get triggered every time someone has any feedback to offer, whether it's good, neutral, or negative, right? You might be unsure how to support neurodivergent, disabled, and highly sensitive folks in real time. And you might have a hard time articulating the unspoken stress that folks are carrying. Is everyone actually okay right now, or are they masking? Are they pretending? Okay. And this is also helpful for events that look successful on paper. They have sold out, high attendance, but people don't stay. They leave. So if you have a multi-day event, people are booking their travel on the day the event ends instead of the day after, because they know they'll be tired and they don't see the value in staying until the very end. Because day one completely took it out of them, or all the travel to get to where you are completely took it out of them. They don't come back, even though they had a good time, even though they took something from the event, and even though they love to work with you in more distant ways. They don't come back to the next live event because it was too much. And they don't bring friends who might need more support than they do. So you might have people who do everything together. Yeah, we love friends. We love besties who adventure together. We love besties who business together, and we love besties who heal together. However, if one friend is really sensitive to socializations, to sensory environment like temperature, sound, lighting, whatever, or when they're in new situations, they need to observe for a while if the rules or expectations aren't specifically laid out for them, they might not even come because it's just too much work for their nervous system and their brain. Because neurodivergent folks and folks with complex trauma and sensory processing disorders, they work at rest. Even at rest, their brains are unable to filter out all the different voices talking at once, the textures of the seat, the smell of the food, the wind that's blowing, the static on the microphone, like whatever it is, all of that competing data all at once, plus the unknown, is too much. So if your most sensitive people don't feel safe and considered, your event is not actually as successful or inclusive as your metrics say it is. Just because everyone who's able-bodied, cisgendered, mostly white, had a great time and you sold every single seat does not mean your event was inclusive or successful from a diverse, supportive perspective. So what Sensory Balance Space Inc. actually changes for your guests, we create a facilitated nervous system safe space inside your event. Okay, so you've got the food and water station. Think business conference for a second. You've got a food and water station. You've got the bathrooms. You've got your selfie area. You've got the vendors. And then you've got an extra space for a sensory balance space. And there's a video feed from this stage. Most venues do this. If you ask them, they're happy to do it, to set up an extra screen or to project it on the wall. Like that's what we use the green room in most event spaces for sensory balance space, because a green room can be in any room, right? When you have a good event planner. But sensory balance space allows them to see what's going on, so they're not missing anything. They can still hear the keynote, but they're surrounded by way less energy in a room that's like frequency is intentional. There's things for them to do with their human body so that their higher self and their consciousness can still tune in and receive what's being given, while their meat suit gets to calm down, right? So what this does is it helps your guests go from surviving to choosing. They're not just enduring the event, they're taking control of their experience in a way that they have a place to go when things feel too loud, too bright, too crowded, or emotionally intense. Especially our autistic and trauma complex people, we have a really hard time being perceived when we're having emotions, okay? And part of that is because we spent our entire life being punished for having them the way that we have them. And now we're expected in this big group setting where everyone can see us to be vulnerable. That's not going to happen unless you give us a little bit of agency. It gives us permission to pause and come back without any shame. And the outcome actually is that they spend more time in the event. They don't leave the bubble. There's more presence, more positive connections, and they find the micro community that they belong to that already exists inside of your macro community, right? Like, when you go into a sensory balance space and there's 5 people in there and they're all the 5 people that you thought weren't as weird as you, and it turns out we're all exactly the same, the freedom that that brings, I cannot share that enough. It gives them a movement from shame to self-trust. So instead of thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this event like everyone else? They get to experience, of course I get support here. Of course my needs are normal. And of course they're valid. So that gives them increased self-trust and an increase in trust in your company and your work, and a willingness to attend future events and offerings. It takes them from masking to authenticity without any pressure. Guests don't have to perform okayness. They can stim, they can pace, they can go quiet, they can take breaks, they can go and do whatever it is that they need to do. And the outcome is that people engage more honestly and deeply with your content, your community, and the leaders. And you would maybe not be surprised at how many of your speakers, staff, volunteers, and like VIP members end up in that space. Right? Okay. And then the long-term ripple. They leave with practical sensory tools, a deeper sense of belonging and connection to the community that you have created, and a lived experience of being accommodated without having to justify themselves or educate a single person on how to support them. So, what's the outcome? They're more likely to sign up again. They're more likely to bring their people, and they're more likely to talk about you and your company as a brand, the ones who actually get it, the ones who have moved beyond the, okay, I asked your pronoun, and I asked if you needed any sensory support, and I asked if you had any accommodations. Ta-da! Like, ew, right? Okay. What this gives your business and your brand is more than something that's just nice to have. Okay. This gives you a reputation for real inclusion instead of performative. You're not just posting a land acknowledgement and a rainbow graphic in June. You're not just saying like, and we respect all identities. Please come find us if you have any problems. No, we have a dedicated space here to handle anything that comes up for you, whether you're overwhelmed, whether you've been activated, whether you're triggered, whether someone said something and it caused you to feel unsafe. We have a safe, supportive, blah, 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 whether you get one person or two persons or whatever. So like we have a space dedicated. We've already planned for the messiness of the human experience. Here's how we're taking care of. So what you're doing is you're building events where neurodivergent people, disabled people, sensitive folks, and racialized folks can tell others, I felt safer here than I have at any live event. The outcome of that is stronger brand trust, better word of mouth, being known as ahead of the curve instead of scrambling to catch up. It gives you better event metrics that actually matter. More people spending time on site, more return of attendance, more quality of engagement. When people have somewhere to regulate their nervous system, their emotions, and their energetics, they stay longer. They participate in a more meaningful way. They're more open to your offers, your upsells, your ongoing programs, and your relational connections without you having to do more work. You don't have to lay it on so thick because they're already in the posture of gratitude and ready to receive. So this gives you higher retention, more repeat customers, and a higher know, love, trust value of each client or attendee. It reduces your risk and gives you alignment with accessibility expectations. So you're proactively considering disabled and neurodivergent people in your design. And if you were to hire us for a space, you can also ask for some training for your staff. I have a manual, and inside the manual, it even tells you how to set up the furniture to allow enough room for a stroller, a wheelchair, or a walker to turn around. Because one thing that I have not yet seen, and maybe I'm just attending the wrong events, or maybe I'm exactly correct in doing what I'm meant to do. One thing I have not seen yet at a business conference, at a spiritual entrepreneur conference, is a person in a freaking wheelchair. And that tells me a lot about how inaccessible these events are. Okay. Because if you are a human being alive today in 2025 and you plan to live past your 60s, you will be disabled at some point in your life. That is the nature of the human experience and of getting old. You will either be disabled permanently, temporarily, or in waves. Okay? Because our meat suit likes to give out before our spirit and our brain does. So you're telling anybody with a mobility need, and even ambulatory users, like I brought a cane and a wrist brace, and a friend of mine also had just recovered from surgery, and she brought her cane to an event that we just went to. And I had remember, like when I registered, I communicated that we had disability and accessibility needs. And even though this is like my favorite event and I love this event and it's one of the best events ever, I had to ask for chairs for us at one of the sessions because they had removed every single chair out of the space, which means anyone who has a disability and has a mobility challenge couldn't participate. Thankfully, I noticed before my friend did, so I ran to the people I knew and was like, hey, can we get a chair for this person? They are not going to be able to participate unless you bring them one. That should never have had to happen, right? Right. Okay. So by proactively considering all of this, you're reducing the likelihood of a harmful experience, blow-ups, or people chit-chatting on the internet and reducing your company's reputation. So it lowers your reputational risk. It gives you stronger alignment with accessibility norms and legal expectations in your region, which you are required to know, and a clear story of how you support diverse bodies and brains. It gives you differentiation in a crowded market. The market isn't oversaturated, but it's crowded. People are loud and they're everywhere. In a world of endless summits, festivals, retreats, and programs, most are built for the most resourced, the most regulated, the most neurotypical, and the most healed and aligned nervous systems. They are not designed for the people who don't fit into those boxes. By offering sensory balance and accessible care, you stand out as future facing. You stand out as thoughtful, and you stand out as genuinely human first, recognizing that not every single thing that a human experiences is something that can or even should be healed. So you don't have to shout as loud to get attention because your experience speaks for you. I'm going to take a drink of water. I feel my throat chakra is about to start barking at me a little bit. When your most sensitive people are held without even having to ask for it, everyone benefits. That is good ethics and good business. What gives you, as a leader and a human, success through this? Relief from the pressure of getting it all right alone. Just think about it. That's an insane amount of pressure to be able to think, how am I going to hold sacred space for all of these people who are so freaking different than me? I know I will hire someone who already knows how to do that and take the pressure off of myself and off of my team. Ta-da! Think about everywhere else where you're like, this is something that's really important to me and I could figure it out. In order to figure it out, I would have to just take away from my passion and my purpose. So instead, I'm going to take leadership and ownership, and I'm going to delegate in my authority with my resources for someone else to do that. A lot of us do that with marketing. A lot of us do that with tech. A lot of us do that with like an accountant. A lot of us do that with like an assistant, a VA, a personal assistant, a nanny, a housekeeper. It is not shameful to outsource inclusion to somebody with lived experience and training, ethics, and already has it all set up. That's not irresponsible. Whether it's me or not doesn't matter. Like, yeah, okay, it matters to me, but honestly, there's like billions of people in the world, and realistically, there's one Cheryl. So if I'm not your flavor, go find your flavor. We're out there. There's loads of people teaching all-in-one solutions. But nobody does it like me, and nobody understands the industry the way I do from the inside. Right now, when you think about inclusion, when you think about possibility of an autistic person, a person with hyperactive ADHD, a person living with PTSD, like especially in today's climate with ongoing natural disasters and ongoing political instability, as we all collectively rise against the oppression of friggin' patriarchy. Okay, I'm not going to get distracted. Especially right now, you might be feeling, am I missing something? Is someone quietly suffering or ghosting or exiting the space because I don't know what I don't know? With our support, training, and consultation, you have a framework, you have the language, you have a partner who's thinking about the nervous system side of your work and filtering that through the lens of what it means to be queer, what it means to be disabled, what it means to be autistic. All of my staff are trained in anti-racist frameworks. They're trained in reconciliation principles. They're trained in person-first language. They're trained in how to talk to queer people. They're trained in believing who people say they are until they reveal themselves to be different. They're trained in nonviolent de-escalation techniques. They're trained to witness the difference between self-regulation and someone who needs support. And the outcome is less anxiety for you and your team, less pressure, more capacity to actually lead and do your work instead of constantly putting out fires or over apologizing when you make a mistake on stage. Do you know how many people misgender me at events? Almost everyone. Almost everyone. Almost everyone misgenders me at events. Like, even people who've worked with me for 5 years misgender me at events. And it used to make me feel like those events aren't safe, like they don't care, until I realized that 98% of us are running on autopilot. And so when you're in that event, you're thinking about your experience, you're thinking about your people, you're thinking about your keynote, you're thinking about how the clicker isn't working and the tech isn't working. And oh my God, I need to not get dysregulated and taken out of my body right now because of a friggin' clicker. You're not thinking about what 200 people's pronouns are, right? But if you have a dedicated, inclusive, safe space on site, or a dedicated, inclusive, safe person navigating there for support, then you can say, if at any point you are activated and you need additional support because of who you are and how you are, we have sensory balance space at the back with a trained facilitator whose pronouns are blah, blah, in case it's not me. And you are already showing people that you've taken care of it. Yeah? Beautiful. It gives alignment between your values and your practice because so many of you personally value inclusion. So many of you personally value disability rights and accessibility. So many of you personally value sacred safety for trauma survivors. But most of you aren't doing it out loud in your business. You're doing it out loud in your life, but you're not doing it out loud in your business. Or you're talking the talk on the internet, and maybe you're giving accessible, equitable rates and scholarships to underserved and underprivileged people, but your retreat is booked at a place that isn't accessible for mobility issues. Your place isn't inclusive. Like, I already can't go because my body can't do that. When you close your eyes and you picture your audience, when you picture the people who will be most transformed by your work, are they all able-bodied, affluent people? Or are they as diverse as the global population? Because if it's the second group, we can help you get there faster. So you get to say that you care about inclusion, trauma-informed places, and accessibility, and turn those values into lived practices that people can actually feel and observe with their felt senses. The outcome is less cognitive dissonance and more congruence, a deeper sense of integrity and pride in how you run things. And eventually, it just becomes part of who you are. So you get more space to do your actual work. So with someone else holding the sensory and relational container of a sensory balanced space, you can spend more time coaching, teaching, and facilitating transformation however you envision it, giving a better delivery, less burnout, and a higher quality emotional presence for yourself, because you're not worrying about that person in the background who you really hope has a good time because you know they're already taken care of. You're not worried about the person who's up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, because you already know, love, and accept that different people have to do different things with their bodies in order to feel safe and regulate the energy that they're moving through. And you have an increased confidence with diverse humans. Through our consultation and training, we build skill and comfort with neurodivergent guests. We help you learn the lingo and how to approach disabled people, and how to witness and co-regulate with complex emotional states without removing the agency. So that you can stop walking on eggshells, you can stop worrying if you're going to get it wrong, and you can start leading with calm, grounded confidence in the face of intensity or difference. So this is how we can help you get there. These are the main ways that we're doing it for the next foreseeable future. On-site event services, so our all-in-one pop-up that we have at different tiers and levels for different types of events. A lived embodied experience of what sensory balance space feels like inside of your event. And it gives you real-time guest feedback and visible shifts in energy and engagement, and becomes the proof of concept for you and your team. Like, the best way to fully engage and understand what I mean is to simply have us come. It's to simply have us come. I've done over 1,000 hours of training in nervous system regulation and deconstruction. I've brought myself out of a cult. I've brought myself out of the religious trauma programming. I have done so much work coming from the background that I've come from, and I know how to help support other people without dismissing their current experience. We offer training for teams, for staff and volunteers on your team, so they can learn how to use inclusive language, how to respond to overwhelm without panic, and how to support neurodivergent and disabled guests with respect and consent, so that the culture of inclusion starts living in your organization and not just when we show up at your event. We also give consultation and strategy support by being a thinking partner to audit your current experiences. So perhaps online, you have a ton of coursework that is heavily gendered. Maybe there aren't any transcripts. Maybe you don't provide plain text PDFs and you only do really high impact, beautiful ones. And you're leaving a ton of people behind because of that. So we help you design events, programs with sensory and accessibility and anti-racist, anti-oppressive frameworks in mind from the beginning. And we make it really friggin' easy. Like, instead of trying to educate you all the way through, I'll literally help you change your existing copy to be more inclusive, so that you can see the way the speech is modeled and how subtle it is and how easy it is to be inclusive, because the difference between hi everyone and hi ladies is people are left out. When someone goes, where are the women in the room? And I'm like, okay, so this is either going to be about babies, bleeding, or boobs. Like, the amount of lingo in the coaching industry specifically that equates womanhood with the ability to reproduce or not is appalling, especially in light of like cancer survivors and trauma survivors and infertility and all of these different things. And so it's actually really easy to be inclusive without being clunky. And I promise you, the people who care will notice, and the people who don't care won't notice. It won't even matter to them. A really good example of that is, over the last 5 years, my own coach and mentor has gone from saying that she works with visionary female entrepreneurs to visionary leaders and entrepreneurs. Right? So what has that done? Well, now she has tons of non-binary and queer and trans folks working with her. She had a cisgender man come through her program certification recently, and none of the women were shook. Like, it opens up your work to a broader audience, and isn't that why we're all here? Okay, so then you stop retrofitting everything with inclusion and you start planning for it. It becomes part of how you show up. And I give an ongoing support and relationship with anyone who works with me. So you're not alone in the learning curve, and you involve with guidance instead of stagnation and then regressing. Instead of being like, oh, this is too hard. When it becomes hard, we get to unpack that together, because a lot of the times the reason it's hard is because it's stuck to an outdated belief system and that we're operating on unconsciously. And we all know how to reprogram that, or you wouldn't be here, right? Everything we offer exists so your people can stay, belong, and thrive at your events, and so that you can lead with more ease and integrity. Now, we're almost done. Okay, thank you for being here. If you're watching the replay, maybe you want to pause, get a drink, get up, move your body. So, in the next few years, we're working towards a world where sensory supportive, autonomy based spaces are the standard at live events. Guests start to expect a nervous system aware design the way they expect washrooms and watering stations. Leaders and organizations are known for the felt experience they create, not just the content they deliver. And what that means is that if you trust yourself, when you decide to add this to your event, to your organization, to your leadership structure, or maybe just for yourself, you may recognize as an early adopter and a standard setter. You get to shape how the future of this industry starts to look, especially in your niche. And you get to be the one. We all love this. We all love this. Okay. Especially if you're a millennial. Okay. You get to be the one others reference when they say they were doing this way before anyone else. Right? Okay. Any of my hipsters? I knew about them before they were mainstream. That kind of vibe. Okay. So if your body already feels like we need this, if your heart leapt at any point, if you were like, oh my God, yes, thank you for articulating what I've been feeling, the friction I've been experiencing in the direction I want to go. Or maybe I've been praying for you. I want to hear about your event and your community. Please reach out and we'll explore whether bringing a sensory balance space to your world makes sense right now, or if it's time for consultation, or if you just want me to come and teach. You want me to share my story? You want me to share about the 5+1 framework? You want me to teach people how to get to know their audience without sounding like they're in a friggin' inclusion seminar? I can help. But you have to reach out. You have to dive in. One thing I do want to say is that people more than ever are buying with their values right now. They're not just buying and investing in what you have to offer. They're investing in who you fundamentally are and whether or not they're willing to align themselves with that. Let's look at Target. Target scrapped DEI principles when pressure was put on by the sitting government in their country. I'm from Canada, by the way. And their profits still continue to nosedive. They just keep going. They just keep going down. At the exact same time, Costco said, we refuse to cave on this. In fact, we are going to include people even harder. That's not the exact language, but you get the vibe. And they had a record-breaking uptick in memberships. People who never otherwise would have shopped at Costco went and got memberships because people care about including other people. More and more businesses who exclude by accident or intentionally are being held accountable. And they're calling that accountability being canceled when it's not. We are here for a higher purpose. We see the whole human. We see the mind, the body, and the spirit. This stuff, the inclusion part, is whether or not everybody gets access to what we know the whole world needs. So instead of me trying to teach inclusion and getting people to take my programs, I said, screw that. I'm going to start a company where you can just hire me to come and be it. And then I got this whisper. Cheryl, we need more of you. You have to also train people. So where we're going in the next 3 years is launching a certification program where people can be trained in sensory balance space principles and choose whether or not they want to be available to host spaces through my company or just carry on their merry way being fully trained and certified in this. Okay, cool, great, wonderful. We're also looking at facilitation and speaking opportunities. Cool, great, awesome. Lastly, the thing I'm the most excited about is we're going to do an event that is the first of its kind, and I'm not going to share too many details, but I'm aiming for 2028 or sooner in Canada, where it's the only neurodivergent conference I've ever seen in my entire life that isn't focused on how to make us mask better, behave better, be less intense, be less problematic for the neurotypicals. It's all about celebration of embodying who you are and how you be without shame. And I'm so excited. So my delight is to support people to do what they're meant to do as they authentically are and make it accessible to everyone. And that's what we do here at Sensory Balance Space, Inc. Thank you so much for attending, for watching the replay. I can't wait to hear your questions and hear how we can partner with you. We are already booking into part of 2026. Like we're booked in February already, and we're booked in June and might be booked in May. So if you have events on your roster, retreats, conferences, festivals, teachings, certifications, anything like this, or if you want to bring inclusion into your team framework, please reach out. I would love to connect. Bye for now.